Hi everyone, welcome to this week's career episode of the Artless Dialogue. As always, it's me and Saud here. How's it going?
Hello, I'm very happy because my mic is finally working. The last episode I had to deal with this mic over here. So
Excellent. Well, do you know what the bit our kind of viewers don't see is the 1 hour it takes us to get our mics ready. You would think it'd be straightforward as just plugging in a headphone, but no, there's always something.
yep,
And what I can't figure out, and if any listeners can help us with why plugging it out and plugging it back in seems to work. There's no logic to why that should work, but it does. But there we go. That's one for another day. This week the question we're kind of covering is, and again, it's a fairly kind of common question for those people kind of starting out their career, and as they start out their career, they're kind of going, we hear this thing called a career plan. Where do I get one of these things? Is it in the library? Do I go on the internet? I can't seem to find my career plan. So today we're going to kind of cover that really, which is, the first steps to career planning. So how do you go from a standing start to having a career plan? So Sal, why do you kick us off? What's your thoughts on this?
okay. So career planning, it's a fun one. I think the first thing before you start a plan is you should know your strengths and you should know your interests. So strengths would mean your soft skills, whether you're good at that, which ones you're good at, your technical skills. So you should know your skills, your strengths, and then you should know your interests. Interests could be, I like communicating with people regularly, I like solving problems in teams, or I like working alone on a laptop, doing analysis, coding, stuff like that. Or you like advising other people on what to do. So your interest and your strengths, and then you have to see where they overlap. So I think that's the first step, because that shows you what's available to you. No, sorry, that shows you what you want to do and what you can do. So I think knowing that is the first step to planning your career. Ash, do you agree? As that's the place to start off with.
Yeah, I think that's always a good place to start anything, to be honest, because you kind of need to be self-aware of where you are on any journey before you start. It's kind of like Google Maps. You don't go, I'm going to go to this place, but my starting point, I don't know, so you should know your starting point. So I completely agree. And for me, the kind of a career plan to me, like, the sort of analogy is it's like a coat or a jacket. It's different depending on, the weather. So if it's in the middle of summer, you're going to wear a different type of jacket, if at all. You might wear a jacket to protect you against the sun. If it's in the middle of winter, especially in Scotland, you're going to wear the biggest, hottest jacket you can get. That's waterproof and all sorts of proof. So career plan is like that, because if you're in an organization and you're going, I'm in this organization, I see my career in this organization, then your career plan would be very different to someone who potentially is, doing a role in a particular company and wants to eventually go somewhere different. And so career plans are kind of different, but I think you're 100% right. Step one is kind of understanding where you are, because that's got to be a starting point. If you don't know that, then your career plan is going to be built outside of that, and it's going to get potentially kind of take you down the wrong route.
So I think the most natural way to progress from after defining your interests and your skills and where they overlap is finding what opportunities are available for you that meet your interests and your skills as well. And I think that's one of the hard parts, because it's very hard to find a career where you're just born to do it, in the sense that all the tools required. Most of it requires a learning curve. Most of it requires you to build new skills, gain higher education, or just learn a new programming language, or learn a new way of communication with people. So I think that's the hard part, finding which job role interests you and matches your skills as well. And of course, there's going to be some gaps, and it's your job to fill those gaps. And how can you fill those gaps? That's the next question we should be thinking about, right?
Yeah. And I think exactly right, because what you're describing is pretty much your career plan, because I think most commonly where people struggle with this is maybe coming off graduating, and you've graduated, and now suddenly there's an expectation you're going to go off and do something and have a career, and people then go, well, what's that even mean? Where do I go to my career plan? And I would say the majority of people don't have a career plan. And the implication of not having a career plan, just to those spot on points there, Saud, you mentioned, is you're potentially a little bit directionless, a little bit rudderless. So it doesn't mean you're not performing well in your day job, doesn't mean you might not be enjoying yourself, but you don't have a clear direction you're aiming to. And if you're not kind of aware of the skills you're developing, not that you're not kind of learning new things, but are you learning the things that are going to actually help you along your career path? And if I kind of reflect, I remember when I joined the bank I work in kind of 16, 17 years ago, and I just kind of I did the things that were in front of me. So first 2-3 years, work is keeping me busy, and I'm learning tons of stuff. And it's probably about 4 or 5 years in, possibly, where I'd learned lots, but I hadn't really thought about what that means from a career for me. So I'd learned stuff, but it wasn't very structured. It wasn't kind of building blocks for me to take me to a place I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then I kind of decided that actually I want a leadership role. I want to influence at a strategic level, and I want to have a say in the bank's direction, growth, and what it's trying to do. So I wanted some kind of role of influence. And then to your point, you go, well, I certainly need to focus on my communication skills, because they need to be sharp, because for those kind of roles they have to be. You've got to be a strong influencer. People management certainly becomes a big important thing, and up until then I hadn't really done people management because I didn't think it was a thing I needed to focus on. Suddenly now you go, actually, leadership role, people management, motivation, setting strategy, all these skills suddenly start coming to light that actually you need to start working on these. And then you go, actually, right, I now need to build something structured that's going to give me those skills. And I can't just go from, zero to being an amazing communicator at an executive level. I can't suddenly go, I've been influencing people at my peer level, at a junior level. Now I'm still going to go and influence the bank's executive. That's not going to happen. So you then go, right, I now know the journey I want to go on, but I know there's some big blocks of learning, of experience, of technical knowledge I need to now, build along the way. And that's effectively kind of, your career plan.
Yeah, no, that's quite well said, that once you step up, you have to develop new skills, and that even though your line or department may be the same, the skills required at each level will vary quite a bit. And I've noticed that being a big challenge for university graduates as well. So, for example, a university graduate may know how to perform financial analysis for corporations, the basic debit, credit, accounting, and everything. When you step in the real world, your job entails you to know much more than accounting or the tools of the trade. You need to know how to write professional emails, how to respond to conflict, disagreements, how to ensure those happen in a positive way and something good comes out of those things. And these skills aren't always taught in university. You may learn them as you go along, but that's a big skill gap that I feel that isn't focused on a lot, and a lot of graduates face that, because a lot of instances happen where you don't like your manager may not like you, but you have to work together to make something happen. In university, if someone did that, you just change your group or you just not hang out with them. You don't have that option in real life. So I think this, these skills are very important. Just on your question, Ash, you said 4 or 5 years in, you started to think about your career, where I can take my skills. I want a leadership position. Just a question, because when it comes to career planning, I like to think of some principles, some foundational principles that guide all of my decisions. So Elon Musk once said about SpaceX that every decision I make, the rule for making that decision is whether it takes us closer to Mars, like makes us land on Mars earlier or later. If it's later, if it's earlier, I say yes. So I think you should have some principles in place that each decision, each opportunity should meet those principles, and you can say yes. So did you have any kind of principles in mind going forward, or did you have a different methodology to make decisions?
No, and it's well articulated, Saud, and I probably didn't have it kind of quite well structured in my head. For me, it was kind of like an outcome I wanted to get to. And
Vision.
people talk about vision, yeah, the North Star, the thing, and so I kind of knew there was an outcome for me, which was having a new family and going, right, I ultimately want them to have a great future. So my ultimate outcome, the thing that was like I was going to was, right, that's it. I want everyone to be looked after, cared for, safe and happy, right? If I can get there, then what do I need to do to help me get along that journey? And then when you kind of get into it, there's two things that helps you, right? And it's funny because I was doing some mentoring of one of my kind of old mentees who's in engineering, and he was kind of really struggling with wanting to kind of get to that. His goal was more career growth, but didn't really have a vision or a North Star. And the danger with that is it'll give you some element of structure, but the motivation isn't there to then push you up that ladder. And we talked about this in the last episode about uncomfortable spaces. So once you've got a career plan, the chances are there's many steps on that career plan are stepping into uncomfortable spaces. It's about doing things you haven't done before, learning new things, probably in areas that you might not necessarily naturally be skilled at or experienced at.
Yeah.
And the thing for him was he didn't have his North Star, didn't have the thing to focus on. And if you didn't have his North Star, when you get into those uncomfortable spaces, you need something to push you through it. You need something to take that other step along that career path. And if you don't have that, then you struggle. And for me, it was almost the other way around. I had this North Star, and I always had that, and it was always my driver. But I didn't initially have the structure. So I'm working really hard, really, scoring well, performing well, but not really making any traction. So it's kind of like that, when you first learn how to swim, but badly. Yeah. And you kind of, you're kind of, splashing away, and you're like, I'm absolutely knackered. And then you see next to you this kind of serene, 80-year-old woman who's just kind of like gliding through the water and barely breaking a sweat. And you're like, how is that possible? And it's because, we both have the same goal. We want to get to the end of this length, but she's got kind of the structure. She knows how to do it. She knows the steps to take. And therefore, it's no longer uncomfortable for her because she's been through that road. For me, it's very uncomfortable because I can't breathe and I'm mainly drinking chlorine. So you do need both. You need the North Star to pull you along, and you need the structure to make sure you're making steps towards it.
Yeah.
And sometimes those steps are sideways because it means it allows you to take a step forward. And I think in my career, I've had roles in transformation and change. I've had roles in, products and marketing, and then various roles in risk. But they've all allowed me to kind of grow and take a step forward ultimately and gain some skills and experience. So, yeah.
That sounds great. And I think your point on that vision is important, but at the same time, knowing what to do to actually achieve that vision. Like the example of swimming, that was perfect. That makes so I think that's very important as well. But on the vision point, I just like to focus a bit on that and just add to that. And because a lot of people have the vision, like there's two ways to approach a vision. One is, let's say, in terms of job title, let's say, or let's say a superficial expectation, right? So I'm going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That's a great vision, and everyone should have if it suits you. But at the same time, there's another side to it as well. So that would be, do you know that if you're a CEO, your work-life balance would be non-existent? You'd be earning lots of money, but you may not be able to have the time to spend it, or you may not have every weekend with your children or your family or your friends. So some people think of the CEO goal, but don't think of what that means. So what I try to do is, I try to list down things that are very important to me right now and what would be important to me 10 years in the future. For example, a certain level, a reasonable level of work-life balance, a good amount of money, of course. Some stuff I enjoy doing, some areas I enjoy working. A corner office would be great. So I keep that stuff in mind. And then I think about what roles would fit that. So maybe the CEO role won't exactly fit that. Maybe a role on a similar level or a lower level, lower than that, or a sideways level, okay, something like that would fit your career goal better. And then I won't be surprised when I get there because I'll know what I'm going into. So I think
Mm-hmm.
having your vision, not in terms of job titles, but in terms of what those job titles mean and how they would affect
Yeah.
your life, I think that's something to think about as well. Because a lot of people, there are two kinds of, most of my friends either fall into one category. They want to be a CEO or they want to start their own business. So both are pinnacles in their own sense. Both are
Yeah.
CEOs, but then they're very different kinds of things. And
Yeah.
the decision falls into what those mean for you and how your life would look like. And that's how
Yeah.
they make that decision.
Yeah, and there's a lot in there, and actually, it's a good prompt because one of the things we should talk about next time is kind of motivators and detractors, because
Make note.
that point there about the CEO, when you kind of analyze that and you kind of question that into more detail, and you go, well, why CEO? What is it you're looking for? You're looking for prestige, or you're looking for acknowledgement externally that you're a CEO. You're looking for, it's really the money, but actually it's not the money, it's what the money gives you. So really, when you kind of dive into it, there's usually a layer of motivation which gets you to the truth. That's what it enables me to do. The CEO is just a thing. And so that's kind of one element to it. The other, I think, is, and it's my favorite kind of analogy I'll use, is this thing about the seesaw, will and desire. And there's everything we all do, right? There's will on one side and desire on the other, right? And you see this every day, right? Go to the gym, any gym you go to, you'll see that happening there in front of you with every single person in the gym.
You'd see it more than I do.
Brilliant. That says a lot. There you go. This will be very relevant then. So there's everyone that's in the gym, right? They all have a desire to better themselves, right? To be physically fit. Someone's training for a race or something else. Someone wants to, have muscles and a six pack. Somebody else just wants to get healthier, right? So they all have a goal, a desire to get to. And if you really kind of truthfully ask them, right, how far along, and they've all got a desire that's aspirational, because that's kind of why you're there.
Yeah.
The will then is the ability to get you there, right? And that's the sacrifices you make, just as you said, very self-aware sacrifices that, right, I'm going to have to, travel for this job. I'm going to have to go to London, go off to the States, I'm off to, the Far East. And so there's a lot of traveling. It's going to impact me, my family, everybody else, right? So there's an element of sacrifice. There's then just the work, we talked about it last episode around uncomfortable spaces. It's not natural for people to operate in uncomfortable spaces for a sustained period of time. We want to go back to our sofa for a few hours and just chill. So pushing yourself along a career path is pushing yourself in uncomfortable spaces a lot.
Yeah.
So again, you're using will to press down on that, because it's not natural for us to do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of this, a lot of the discussions I have when people have these aspirational titles around, well, I want to be this, I want to be the head of this, or I want to do this, or I want to, be a FTSE 100, executive. And you go, well, actually, right, what's the real desire? What's the thing you actually want? And then, do you really have the will? Do you understand what it takes to get there? Have you proven that you've got the will to do that on a regular basis? It's a brilliant Netflix show about Usain Bolt. And it's honestly so motivational, but also quite depressing, because you see this guy, obviously, and we see him for like 10 seconds, and he makes it look so easy, seconds, yeah. and he just comes across like this really happy-go-lucky guy, and we just think he turns up to the 100 meters and then he wins. But honestly, like the 4 years of pre-training he does, like every day till he's sick.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, that guy's got will. That's like some serious willpower to do that. And that's, I think, the thing about the career path as well, which is thinking about your career path and thinking about where you're aspiring to go to, and applying some realism to that. Is that really what you want to do? And do you really have the will to get you there? And if you do, amazing. Yep. But you've kind of got to really question that. And then if you do, you'll get there, no problem. Otherwise, the danger is you're setting a desire that is not achievable. And therefore, back to the gym analogy, if you're going, I want a 6-pack, but I'm not going to go to the gym, I'm not going to eat healthy, then you're constantly going to be looking at yourself going, oh, I still haven't got 6-pack today. And you're not going to be quite happy. Yeah. So it's important that the design will is balanced.
Yeah. And on your will point, that would go back to our episode on setting smart objectives. So smart objectives would go into the will part, the day-to-day, the short-term things you can do and achieve. Those small wins, while you keep that vision in mind, would help you progress every day and every week and every month until you get there.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of, Usain Bolt, I mean, he's like in a year, he's trying to improve his time by 0.2 seconds. I mean, that's crazy. You're going, that's microseconds per month.